2026 budget for unpaid contractors. NCC and CBN set to roll out refund framework for failed airtime and data transactions. Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority threatens stiffer sanctions over flight delays and cancellations. On the foreign scene, United States exempts foreign-made drones from Trump import ban on new models. And in sports, 2 people wounded in shooting involving federal agents in United States. Apologies for that mix-up. We have details of these and other stories coming up in a moment. I am NYAKNNO, Albert. And now the news in full. From the national scene, the federal government has budgeted the sum of 1.7 trillion naira in the 2026 appropriation bill to settle outstanding debts owed to contractors for capital projects executed in 2025. A breakdown of the proposed 2026 national budget shows that the amount is captured under the line item titled Provision for 2024 Outstanding Contractors' Liabilities, signaling official recognition of delayed payments to contractors amid recent protests over delayed settlements. The budgetary provision follows mounting pressure from indigenous contractors and civil society groups who, in 2025, raised alarm over unpaid contractual obligations, allegedly exceeding 2 trillion naira. Some groups under the All Indigenous Contractors Association of Nigeria had also staged demonstrations in Abuja, lamenting the severe impact of delayed payment on their operations, with many contractors reportedly unable to service bank loans taken to execute government projects. Earlier, Minister of Works Senator Dave Umahi had promised to clear verified arrears owed to federal contractors before the end of 2025. However, only partial payments were made amid revenue constraints, prompting the inclusion of the 1.7 trillion naira line item in the 2026 budget as a catch-up mechanism. In another development, the federal government has restated its commitment to empowering artisans from the grassroots to enable them to upgrade their skills to meet national and global standards. The Director General of the Industrial Training Fund, ITF, Dr. Afeez Ogun, gave the assurance yesterday while declaring open the Skill Up Artisans Super Zonal Rally held in Kano State to create awareness of the program across the Northwest region. Dr. Ogun, represented by the immediate past Zonal Director of ITF, Muhammad Aminu, explained that the Super initiative is aimed at transforming artisan skills into sustainable livelihoods, turning them into employers of labor rather than job seekers. Ogun noted that the program focused on restoring dignity to skilled work and equipping artisans with relevant competencies that form the foundation of a strong, productive economy, in line with President Bola Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. He explained that the objective of the rally was to create awareness of the program in the region to enable people make the best use of the opportunity provided by the fund, and urged traditional rulers, community and youth leaders, as well as women leaders and trade associations to help ITF in spreading the message to enable artisans key into the program. Away from that, the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC, and the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, have drawn up a framework to address consumer complaints arising from unsuccessful airtime and data transactions during network downtimes, system glitches, or human input errors. The framework is the outcome of several months of engagements involving the NCC, the CBN, mobile network operators and MNOs, value-added service VAS providers, delivering value and experience delays in resolution. The framework represents a unified position by both the telecommunications and financial sectors on addressing such complaints, which identifies and tackles the root causes of failed airtime and data transactions, including instances where bank accounts are debited without successful delivery of services. It also prescribes an enforceable service level agreement for MNOs and DMBs, clearly outlining the roles and responsibilities of each stakeholder in the transaction and resolution process. Still in the news, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, has issued a stern warning to domestic airlines against persistent flight delays and cancellations, saying it will push for stiffer penalties against operators. Spokesperson for the NCAA, Michael Achimugu, yesterday said while the federal government has consistently supported airlines in the face of industry challenges, recent events have made it necessary to impose heavier ramifications where poor operational performance persists. Achimugu, who posted on X, said that while the majority of flight disruptions are not caused by the airlines, there is a need for airlines to improve communication during flight disruptions. This comes as an actress and filmmaker, Bolaji Ogunmola, has criticized an airline for leaving her stranded at the Ekiti State Airport for more than 24 hours, a disruption, she said, caused her to miss the first day of a 20 million naira film production. In a video shared on Instagram, Ogunmola described how repeated flight delays, cancellations, and rescheduling derailed her plans and left her in distress. Moving on, the Debt Management Office (DMO) has secured 1.144 trillion naira at its first Nigerian Treasury bills auction of 2026, with stop rates climbing across all maturities as investors continue to show a strong appetite for government securities. According to the World Economic Situation and Prospects 2026 released yesterday by the United Nations (UN), this was as global economic output was forecast to grow by 2.7% this year, slightly below the 2.8% estimated for last year and well below the pre-pandemic average of 3.2%. The auction held on Wednesday, January 7th, 2025, recorded 108.17 billion naira raised for the 91-day bill, 48.23 billion naira for the 182-day tenor, and 987.78 billion naira for the 364-day paper. The results highlighted an upward repricing of risk-free assets, particularly at the long end of the curve, as investors sought government instruments as a hedge against inflation and policy uncertainty. Despite the higher rates, demand remained resilient, underlining robust system liquidity and investors' readiness to lock in elevated yields. You're listening to Global News on Memories 96.5 FM. More reports after the break. Do stay with us.
Stay up to date with all the latest in news, sports, and entertainment. Memories FM
96.5.
Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned to Global News on Memories 96.5 FM. And now to the rest of the news. On the foreign scene, Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko yesterday said the debt-ridden country would not need to implement a restructuring plan despite difficult repayment schedule. The West African nation is grappling with debts that the International Monetary Fund (IMF) said hit 132% of gross domestic product at the end of 2024 after the current leadership uncovered billions in debts that were not reported by the previous administration. The discovery saw the fund freeze a $1.8 billion lending program, forcing Senegal to rely heavily on regional debt auctions to meet its financial demands. Analysts and investors have said it is increasingly likely the government will have to restructure, but Sonko told a rally in November 2025 that Senegal was resisting pressure from the IMF to restructure. While he acknowledged that the country was facing particularly difficult repayment deadlines this year, he said he was confident it would find solutions. And outside Africa, tensions over United States President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown rose across the US yesterday after the second shooting involving immigration officers in 2 days, deepening rifts between the state and federal officials over how and why the shootings occurred. Protests intensified in Minnesota following Wednesday's fatal shooting of a 37-year-old mother by an immigration and customs enforcement officer with Minnesota and US officials offering starkly different accounts of the shooting and state investigators complaining they were shut out of the federal inquiry. Then, in Oregon yesterday, a US Border Patrol agent shot and wounded a man and a woman in Portland, and local officials again immediately called for calm, saying they could not verify the federal government's account of the incident. In both cases, Democratic mayors and governors demanded the Trump administration withdraw federal officers who have been deployed largely to Democratic-led cities in moves approved of by many of the president's supporters after he campaigned on the promise to deport undocumented immigrants. In sports, the Confederation of African Football (CAF) has resolved to appoint the referees for the Africa Cup of Nations AFCON 2025 quarter-final clash between Nigeria and Algeria in secrecy, amid growing tension surrounding officiating decisions at the tournament. The decision was reached following a 2-hour meeting involving match officials currently on duty at the tournament in Morocco, which the CAF Referees Committee imposed strict confidentiality measures on the selection and communication of refereeing teams for key fixtures. According to information gathered, the secrecy directive applies not only to the Nigeria vs Algeria encounter, but also to matches involving Egypt and host nations. Reportedly informed referees that they will no longer be publicly designated in advance, but will now receive the appointments individually via email, in a move aimed at reducing external pressure and speculation. The development comes amid heightened scrutiny of refereeing decisions at AFCON 2025, with several teams and football stakeholders expressing dissatisfaction over recent appointments and performances. That's global news on Memories 96.5 FM, but before we go, let's take a recap of the top stories. The federal government has budgeted the sum of 1.7 trillion naira in the 2026 appropriation bill to settle outstanding debt owed to contractors for capital projects executed in 2024. The Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC) and the Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) have drawn up a framework to address consumer complaints arising from unsuccessful airtime and data transactions during network downtimes, system glitches, or human input errors. We also told you that the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority has issued a stern warning to domestic airlines against persistent flight delays and cancellations, saying it will push for stiffer penalties against operators. And on the foreign scene, tensions over United States President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown rose across the United States yesterday after the second shooting involving the immigration officers in 2 days, deepening rifts between the state and federal